So what are we looking at? We're looking at, I think, two paths. One path is North Korea continues. Now, there will be a response to this resolution on Monday night. The North Koreans do respond. And when they say we will respond, the one thing you can bet on is they will respond. They're pretty consistent. So I'm saying, people say, but you don't know a lot about what's going on. They do know a lot about what's going on. They tell you, we're going to launch missiles, they launch them, we have nuclear tests, they launch them, nuclear, and they're going to respond, and they will respond. There probably will be another missile launch, probably another ICBM, because they need to work on that ICBM that touches the United States. They're on the cusp. I'm making it very clear to the United States we have the capability that will get you. So you stay away from us. This is the security thing. This the so-called extended, if you will, their nuclear deterrence capability. And so we will see that. An intermediate range ballistic missile that could reach Guam. I mean, you know. So we will see that. So North Korea will persist. And what's our response to that? Our president has said very clearly, everything's on the table. Everything's on the table. General Mattis has made that clear, everything's on the table. I think many of us believe, and I think General Mattis has said this, but I think that China needs to, and I think they do understand this, and North Korea needs to understand very clearly, a preemptive strike against a nuclear, but a ballistic missile that potentially has a nuclear warhead or conventional on it, is not only something that the international law permits, because countries are permitted to defend themselves and their people. It's something that the people would demand to sit here and watch a missile being launched that has an ICBM or an intermediate range capability, and if the sense, if the intelligence, if the information is, it could, or it does, or it could have a nuclear or conventional warhead on it, you have no choice but to take it down. That's preemption. Preempt an imminent threat. If it's imminent threat, an obligation. It's not only a right you have, it's an obligation we have, and so forth. So North Korea needs to understand that. And how they respond to that is going to be very interesting. Because with that will be a declaratory policy. You don't want to respond to that. Because you're threatening us and we're doing that. Now, having worked with the North Koreans all these years, they will respond. We saw this in 2010 when they took down a frigate, a South Korean frigate on the northern limit line, and killed 47 sailors. And they went into one of the islands, they occupied the island, they killed a few civilians. They'll probably do something like that again. And so forth. What I'm getting at is the escalatory process here, where there's an element here that things can, and this is the concern, that things can escalate because they will respond. And they may do it asymmetrically, where there's no response. We don't see a response. But all of a sudden, the banks in South Korea are not finding the money. The communication systems are not working the way they're supposed to be working, and maybe the grid's not working the way it's supposed to be working when you're in the midst of a cold winter in South Korea. Who knows? Who knows? But they have capability, and they will do it. That's the escalatory part, and that's always something. But we have many tools available to us. It's not only preempting something of that nature, it's the missile defense systems that we put in place, the THAAD, if you will. The Aegis systems that are in place, the Patriots in place. We have, and we will enhance our missile defense capabilities, and in South Korea, Moon Jae-in is very, in the beginning he talked about, let's look at that. The terminal high altitude area defense is something that's controversial, let's look at it. Well, he has seen clearly what North Korea's been doing, so there is that impetus now, let's move on missile defense. Also joint military exercises. Bring Japan into those joint military exercises, maybe Australia, and make it very clear we're not. And this is where North Korea is. Their goal is very clear when they talk about peace treaty and so forth. That means to them, you get out of South Korea, get out of the peninsula, and stop those military exercises. Cease and desist. That's obviously not going to happen. Even with the peace treaty, I don't think it would happen. But that's not the point. The point is that's where the demands are. We will enhance those capabilities. Missile defense, joint military exercises, secondary sanctions. China is a big country. And China's doing quite a bit. I think China takes a bad rap a lot from the media and so forth. China is doing a bit. They are taking the coal. They are applying some of the sanctions, the resolutions that impose sanctions on North Korea. But it's a big country. And our point is you got to up your game. Because you have banks and you have entities in China that are dealing with North Korean elements that are involved with illicit activities. And that's moving some of the sanctioned materials that we're talking about, and so forth. So that's secondary sanctions. Now we've sanctioned the U.S., has sanctioned the Bank of Dandong and some other entities in China, telling China very clearly that if you don't do it, we're going to do it. Because that's impossible. And now, you know, and China is doing a lot, and I give a lot of credit here. I do go back to what I said about April of 2003, where China brought North Korea to the table, and we started the six-party process. China saying, look, we could bring them to the table, and we heard the freeze for freeze. If you stop your military exercises, they come to the table. And you know, many of us, I think all of us are saying, you know, that's not symmetrical. It makes no sense. Our joint military exercises are with an ally that we've had for decades. They're defensive in nature. And what they're doing when they're launching missiles and having nuclear tests are in violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and they're members of the UN Security Council. It goes against international law, and you're saying that's equal. We should stop that. No, we're not going to do that. They should just come to the table, and when you're at the table, take the gun down. Don't launch missiles. Don't have nuclear tests. Now, it could be one day of exploratory meetings. It could be a week. It could be something. So we have a lot of tools available to us to include what we just did on this past Monday with additional sanctions and so forth. But that means it heats up. So that's that prospect. Many would say that's sort of where we are, and that's probably where we're going to be going.